What's up, Flaniverse? We are ready to talk about the Sunday 3-game slate. Went over most of this yesterday already, so some of you might already have already heard a lot of what I'm going to talk about here today, but figured it's still worth it to do the 3-game slate separately because obviously we lost some options that were available yesterday. The ownership changes, a lot of differences game slate. So I figured it's worth it to just talk about this slate on its own. I'll go over the showdown slates briefly after I'm done talking about the 3-game slate. As usual, going to be starting with quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, going in order, as you can see in the sidebar to my to the right of me on your screen. Tougher Guy says, will we start the afternoon with a shocker? I assume you're talking about this. You think Denver is going to beat the Bills? I don't think so. I don't really see it, but who knows? Playoff football. Didn't really expect the Texans to win yesterday, although that felt like more like a coin flip. Whereas I would be sort of surprised to see the Broncos beat the Bills. It'd be fun. I always like an upset story, except for when it's the Vikings. Don't love it when the Vikings lose. All right. So yes, position by position. At the end, I'll take a brief look at the showdown slates individually. That's kind of the plan for the show as usual. Joe Cohen says, don't doubt them Broncos. I mean, Bo Nix looks legit. Sean Payton, good coach. A lot going on there. All right, let's start with the quarterbacks. And I have it sorted by projection here. Josh Allen does have the top projection on the slate at RotoGrinders by 0.01. 0.01 better projection for Josh Allen than Jayden Daniels. And he's $700 more expensive. So Jayden Daniels, by this, looks like the better play. But kind of interesting. Jayden Daniels also getting a lot more ownership. Josh Allen a little bit more contrarian. Jalen Hurts, a couple points behind them, getting about 20% ownership. Baker Mayfield, another 1.5 below Jalen Hurts. Bo Nix, and then Jordan Love, not projecting well at all on this slate against a tough Eagles defense. Let's just start by taking a look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. I like to look at the last 5 weeks in particular. So it looks like a great matchup for Bo Nix by this metric, primarily through the air, not much going on the ground, but really solid above average matchup for quarterbacks against the Buffalo defense. Pretty nice matchup for Josh Allen. As you see here, it looks like it's about a top 12 matchup or so. Better for running backs on the ground. So nice spot for Josh Allen to run just based on schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position on the ground. Now, this is obviously a small sample size. Don't want to read too much into some of these metrics. I just think it's worth kind of keeping your eye on what the matchups have looked like in recent weeks. Washington, not quite the great matchup that we think of facing Tampa. I know they're also getting some solid defenders back. Anton Winfield and I'm trying to Jalen. I'm forgetting who the other their top cover cornerback is playing today, and that was he was up in the air. But it's been a below average matchup in recent weeks, which is different than I think we typically think of the Buccaneers defense through the air. They've also been really tough on the ground. Not a great matchup for Jordan Love. The ownership reflecting that. Not going to get a ton of ownership on this slate. And then also Green Bay's defense been pretty solid against the pass in recent weeks. Really tough matchup. Commanders have really flipped the script. Like, they were one of the better pass funnel defenses early in the year, and now they've been really good against the pass. Of course, we have Marshawn Lattimore on Mike Evans in that one. Kind of a fun one. But yeah, so kind of a wide range in terms of the schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed matchups, but that Denver Buffalo game standing out as places that the quarterbacks have at least good matchups. Of course, we have a lot of really good fantasy producers on the slate, and also a lot of good rushing quarterbacks on the slate. So it's a little bit different from some slates you can just look at the schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed and get an idea of who you want to play. It's a bit tougher when you're dealing with some really strong rushing quarterbacks. They're just a different type of quarterback. Defenses aren't used to them. Can't read quite as much into the matchup, I think, when you're dealing with quarterbacks of this caliber. But it's going to come down to ownership. Josh Allen just looks pretty under-owned at 19%. I think that's a number that I would like to get on top of. The tough thing with Josh Allen is you don't really know who you want to stack him with. I think Khalil Shakir are going to be pretty chalky on this slate. But then after Khalil Shakir, it's like, do you want to throw in Dalton Kincaid? I think he'll get a fair amount of ownership. We'll talk about some of the pass catching options. I have one, and I talked about it yesterday, that I kind of like better than the field does, I think. But I'm also not super confident. It's still a pretty fringe play on Buffalo that I'm going to be playing, and it's going to help me get pretty unique with my Josh Allen stacks. He's already not getting much ownership, and then if you stack him up differently, I think you can get pretty unique with that build. Jayden Daniels looks, I mean, objectively great. Just looking at the projection, point per dollar projection, going to get a good amount of ownership, but he runs a lot. Again, the matchup doesn't look as good as, I think of it as being typically, and maybe that's just me. I think of Tampa as being a pretty strong matchup for quarterbacks, but hasn't really been the case in recent weeks. Tough matchups for the Philadelphia Green Bay game. Jalen Hurts, still he's cheaper than the other two. I think I'd rather take shots on Josh Allen and Jayden Daniels than Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's a huge priority for me. Mayfield, tough matchup. Nice enough ownership. I think if I had to rank these quarterbacks, factoring in ownership, Josh Allen stands out to me as just the player with a, what have we seen, a 50-point upside this year? Just unmatched upside at the quarterback position, getting just 19% ownership. I think he's probably the best play, in my opinion, relative to ownership. I actually think Bo Nix might be number 2 for me, getting single digit ownership. That price tag, the 6,300, really, like, if he puts up 22 fantasy points and nobody else puts up more than 30, and obviously it not being Jordan Love or Baker Mayfield, none of the expensive guys put up more than 30. I think he could allow you to get to some builds that the other quarterbacks can't allow you to get to, and he's getting really low ownership. So I think it's actually the two quarterbacks in this first game are probably my favorite of the day. From there, I think I just eat the ownership with Jayden Daniels as my third favorite. Probably then Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love would probably be my order. I think currently I have 0% Jordan Love, which I thought about changing that. I do think it's sort of interesting because his receivers are relatively cheap, so the stack can be sort of inexpensive. But I think that I am fading it just because that Philadelphia defense is so tough. But he's $500 cheaper than the next best quarterback. So he allows you to get to even some builds that Bo Nix won't allow you to get to. So if you want to go there, I think that you can make a case for Jordan Love, but I think it's a fade for me. So yeah, I think my highest exposure is going to be to the two quarterbacks in the first game, just like the ownership and what they allow you to do to get a little bit different in terms of ownership for your stack. Curtis's Bills are going to smash today. I mean, I think that is the common assumption. It's my assumption also. But yeah, who knows? The playoffs, things get weird in the playoffs. A lot of Broncos fans in the chat today. So yeah, who knows? Also, yeah, Joe Colum, I forgot to. I did not check the Bills. I saw that Estime is out today. Not a two-headed monster though. They have Tyler Beatty is back. So I don't know. We'll take a look at the running back stuff. I got that right before I started. As I recall, Tyler Beatty was actually taking on a bigger role before he got hurt. So I'm sort of curious if it's what's going on there with Tyler Beatty. I don't think he's going to have much of a role, but maybe he does what Audric Estime was going to do. I don't know. Kind of an interesting one. What team will pay off your student loans today? Probably none of them. I don't know. Are you going to betting on a team? I don't think that there's enough upside in just betting on a team to pay off your student loans, unless you're already super wealthy and just choosing not to pay off your student loans, and you also are not limited and you can put $100,000 on it. Then maybe if you put $100,000 on the Broncos or something, they could, I guess. All right, I think that's enough about quarterbacks. It's usually the least interesting position. To me, at least, I guess. But yeah, I think the quarterbacks in the first game do stand out to me. All right, moving on to running backs. Now here's where we'll get into some of that weird stuff going on with the Broncos. And sorted by fantasy points, Bucky Irving is just mega chalk here. He's only 7,000, as you can see here. He actually projects better than Saquon Barkley at Roto Grinders. Let's see at fantasy points. Curious if it's the same. Yeah, Bucky has the best projection on the slate, and he's only 7,000. Just kind of a mispricing on Bucky. I still think that there are ways for him to fail, but it is just an obvious mispricing on Bucky. Actually, let's start by looking at the schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed again. So over the past 5 weeks, none of these teams have a particularly great matchup. The best actually goes to Saquon. Looks like that's about like the 12th best matchup or so. I'm just eyeballing it. Particularly good through the air, which is not really Saquon's strongest suit. It's actually a bad matchup on the ground, but not bad enough that I'm really concerned about it for Saquon Barkley. But just want to note that it's not like even though it is a slightly positive matchup, it's better for running backs through the air, which Saquon not really used that way that much this year. Pretty middling matchup for Buffalo against Denver. Tampa, again, we think of this as being kind of a run funnel against Washington, and I think it is, but it's, at least in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, it's actually a below average matchup. It is better for running backs on the ground versus through the air. Not a great matchup for the Denver running backs. That's just a gross situation. And then Green Bay and Washington have among the worst matchups out here. Philadelphia just been really, really good defensively. Most of the year they've been really strong defensively. And then Tampa Bay, I really think it is like the Vita Vea effect. Like when he was out, they were really bad against the run. I think just whenever he's in, they are great at stopping the run. Obviously, it's not all one player, but I don't know. They've been awesome against the run in recent weeks. So tough matchup for the Washington running backs. And then again, let's get back to looking at ownership. Saquon, I mean, relative to Bucky's ownership, Saquon does stand out to me at 35%. That's a number that I'd like to get above on Saquon. I think a lot of people want to go to the Buccaneers, so Bucky, Irving, Mike Evans, and we'll get into the matchup there later. But I think because people are paying up for those other positions, kind of tough to get to Saquon. But I think in a Bo Nix build, you're going to be able to afford Saquon. And I think he's really appealing. Nice matchup. He is more expensive and projects, again, about the same as Bucky Irving. So I get it why he's not getting a ton of ownership, but he's just been smashing all year. They should, take the lead and have a lead in the second half, want to run it out. So, I think Saquon looks pretty great. Josh Jacobs, kind of a tough sell for me. They will be running early and often. They love to run the ball. Like their neutral pass rate is really low, which again means their neutral rush rate is really high. So Green Bay does want to run the ball, but again, if Philadelphia can take a lead, and this game is in Philly, they're favored. I don't know. It's going to be tough for them to continue to run the ball in the second half. So I think Jacobs being, more expensive than Bucky, getting the same ownership as Saquon Barkley, I don't know. I think he's going to get squeezed from me a little bit. I suspect I'll be under 34%. James Cook is not the best matchup. It's interesting from the standpoint of this one has I believe it has, actually, let me double check this. I believe it has the highest spread on the slate pretty significantly, but I want to, 7.5 point spread for Buffalo, 5.5 for Philadelphia, and a 3-point spread for the Bucs. So I don't know. It's sort of interesting to me from the standpoint of they should be running the ball in the second half. Like the game script should be good for for Cook. But also it's the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to take their foot off the gas early. Might not happen until the fourth quarter. And I also don't know that it's necessarily going to be the James Cook show in that if that happens, where they are running the clock out at the end, maybe they trust the other running backs enough that they aren't giving Cook all of the work. They also kind of use the other running backs anyway. But we'll take a look at the usage stuff in a minute here. Brian Robinson getting a 16% ownership, I guess at 5,800. I think that's probably fair. Like he is the lead back there nominally. Jaleel McLaughlin is the preferred running back for the Broncos, 17% projected ownership at 4,900. I want to get excited about Jaleel McLaughlin. I feel like 17% is enough that I'm not going to be like super above the field there. I think I'm probably going to be right with the field at 17%. Eckler, I think is fine, even in a tough matchup. I think like just because he's used primarily as a pass catching running back, you can rack up those PPR points. He could score a touchdown. get 6 receptions, and he's just 4,800. Like he could work for a trailing game script. I think he's fine, I guess. I don't think I'm going to play Javonte Williams here. 8% is low enough. You can make a case for it, but I'm still not super enthusiastic about it. All right. Ty Johnson. I don't know. I think he's better for a trailing game script, or like if there was any like reasonable possibility that they're going to get behind. I don't think they're going to get behind enough that Ty Johnson's going to be a big part of the game script, but he's also 4,200, and pass catching running backs obviously can get involved even in games that are just, somewhat competitive in the 2-minute drill, stuff like that. So I think at 6%, he is a fine play. Estimate obviously is inactive. I'll have to refresh this, but I want to take a look at their usage in recent weeks also. See if this has changed. Let's hit the reset button here. There we go. All right, give me 1 second here. All right, go. We have Tyler Beatty in there with a projection of 4. He's probably the best min-priced option. Just looking at, I guess we could play Sean Tucker close there. Will Shipley probably not going to be, I don't even know if he'll be active. So yeah, Tyler Beatty probably does immediately become the most interesting min-priced option. But let's take a look at the running back usage. So I'm going to game log it. Where should we start? I mean, some of them are pretty straightforward. Like Saquon, he's going to get all the work he can handle in a playoff game. Like they're just not going to use the other running backs all that much at all. I guess we can still take a look at the game log. But I wouldn't expect much from like Will Shipley. I just don't think he's going to be involved at all. So week 17, he was still playing. 74% of the snaps, took 9 carries. The targets for targets 17. That's for the team. Sorry. Right? Yeah. So he had 2 of the team's 17 targets. Okay. This is, I feel like this used to be labeled differently, but anyway, 2 of the team's 17 targets, 47.4% route participation for Saquon in his last real game. In week 16, it was Saquon with 29 carries. Man, to Kenneth Gainwell's 4. 1 target for Saquon, 1 for Kenneth Gainwell. Just not much usage for any running back outside of Saquon in competitive games. I think that probably holds here. So I think that one is pretty straightforward. Saquon's just going to get the majority of the work. I think same thing with the Packers. Like they want to establish it. They want to establish it with Josh Jacobs. In their more serious games, like we remember the New Orleans game where it's just like they were never going to give him all that much run. They wanted to save him for Minnesota. The Minnesota game, 17 carries for Josh Jacobs. Did still see 6 for Emmanuel Wilson. I was reading some of the coach speak, and Chris Brooks, it sounds like they were talking him up, but it was like he does a great job of like blocking for the other running backs. So I just don't think they plan to give Chris Brooks a ton of work. I think they primarily view Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson as the top like actual running options, even though Chris Brooks is getting in there. He's primarily being used as a blocker. But in their most recent like serious games where they needed to rely on Josh Jacobs, 17 carries in week 17. Remember week 16, he was dominating, but then they just took him out because they were up by so much. Week 15, 26 carries. I think he's going to be a bell cow. So I don't want to be like fading him too much, but at 34% ownership in a tough matchup at his price tag, I am going to be underweight to Josh Jacobs. But that is the concern is he could have 30 carries here, and it wouldn't be all that shocking if the game stays competitive. I think that one is fairly straightforward. Also, like they want to give Josh Jacobs as much work as they can. Bucky Irving, it's more interesting in Tampa Bay because it's been kind of a recent trend for Bucky Irving to take on a majority of the work. But all the coach speak, I think, seems to kind of indicate that that is the route they want to continue on. 70% of snaps in their most recent game, 19 carries for Bucky Irving, 0 for Rachaad White, 2 for Sean Tucker. And then also 52% route participation, 53% for Bucky Irving and 5 targets to 0 on 27% for Rachaad White, 5% for Sean Tucker. In week 17 at Carolina, we saw 20 carries for Bucky Irving, 6 for Rachaad White, 8 for Sean Tucker. He's very clearly the lead back at this point. It took a little while into the season before we saw it, but any of these recent weeks you see it, it's just it's not like a 60-40 split anymore. It is Bucky Irving is the bell cow. The scraps go to Rachaad White or Sean Tucker, which, early in the year, it kind of felt like you never really knew what was going to happen between these running backs. Any given week, it could be Rachaad White getting a majority of the carries, but not in recent weeks. It has been all Bucky Irving all the time in recent weeks, which the ownership reflects that. He's been really, really good. They use him in the passing game. They use him in the running game. He's cheaper than he should be given his role. But as a result, getting 56% ownership, I think I'm just matching the field there on Bucky Irving. I think I ran a set of lineups so that I don't necessarily have to go back and redo them at the end of the show. I at least have some lineups done. Actually, I don't know if I've submitted them, so I need to do that before the games start. But is this true? Jimmy says Sean Payton saying Tyler Beatty will be a big part of the game plan. All right, so that's one that we need to look at. Who Hams asks, what is Rachaad White's projected ownership? 10%. So more than it probably should be. Like I want to be enthusiastic about, like, he's a player that if he were 1%, I'd be like, all right, well, let's just hope that, he can get a little bit more involved in the passing game. Because they did, like, was it 2 weeks ago when he had the game losing fumble? They were using him. Like, it was sort of annoying that they were using him in the 2-minute drill as the pass catching back. But I don't know, that seemed to be kind of an outlier. Just looking at the trends here. Was it against? Did they lose this game to Carolina? I think this is the game I'm talking about. But he only had 1 target in that game. So I don't know. Am I mistaken here? Which was the game where he had 8 targets against Dallas. This must be the game, week 16. Did he have the game losing fumble there? Now my brain's all jumbled. What the actual timeline was there? Yeah, Chuck G says Beatty was about to take over the backfield before getting hurt. I know that's the weird thing. Yeah, somebody asked me with estimate out how much are you bumping McLaurin. I don't think I'm bumping McLaurin with estimate out because Tyler Beatty is in taking his place. I kind of think Beatty is actually maybe more of a threat than estimate was to Jaleel McLaughlin. Artie wants to know, can you play Allen with Cook? Let's take a look at fantasy points scored report. I'm just going to quarterback and running back. And then on the Bills, so you can see the game log here, Josh Allen and James Cook. Week 1, 32 for Allen, 13 for James Cook. Probably not enough for James Cook to get there. Week 3, 31 for Allen, 19 for James Cook. So here's one where I think you could have used them together. Week 8, 21 for Allen, 28 for James Cook. I think they would have been fine together in that one. On a 3-gamer, I think both weeks 10 and 11 could play. 20 for Allen. I mean, that's probably not enough for Allen. 15.5 for Cook. Week 11, at least 25 for Allen, 19.7 for Cook. I think that one, they could be optimal together. Week 13, 28.4, 19. These scores would be good enough for those two to potentially be optimal together. Week 15, obviously 41.3 for Allen, 26.3 for James Cook. So yeah, my takeaway is we have enough games here where they spiked together that I think you can play Josh Allen and James Cook together, certainly. All right. Just reading chat real quick. All right. Rob asking, anyone in chat know how many points do you need to advance in playoff best ball normally? I don't remember what it was last year, but I think it's just going to vary significantly year to year based on like big spike weeks. All right. Yeah, not playing Michael Burton on a 3-game slate. So yeah, Bucky Irving looks great. I don't know. I think probably just matching the field there. James Cook, 27% ownership. Again, I'm trying to see what are the places that I think I will be up. So I know I'm going to be overweight to Saquon, underweight to Josh Jacobs. So I think those two immediately those are where I'm taking stands. I think I'm probably just about with the field on Bucky Irving and just about with the field on James Cook is where I'd like to be. I'm going to be underweight to Javonte and Rachaad White. Jaleel, probably about trying to match the field. I think Brian Robinson, probably about trying to match the field. I do like in a 150 set, I do take, some overweight approaches sometimes on the grosser, like contingency type plays where it's like if they have some standalone value and some contingent upside on a 3-game slate, I find that pretty interesting sometimes. I think like Austin Eckler stands out as one of those types of plays, but he's getting 13% ownership. This is the downside to 2024 DFS is I feel like Austin Eckler would have been 2% owned 3 years ago, and now he's up to 13%. And it's kind of like, all right, I don't really feel I need to take an overweight stance there. Tyler Beatty, I'm guessing is going to have very little ownership. I'm curious what the quotes are from Sean Payton on Tyler Beatty. I don't know if there's anything in the Coach Speak Index, at least last I looked. I don't know if you're watching like a pre-game program and seeing something on Tyler Beatty, but I would be curious to hear the quotes there. Yeah, I'm still not seeing anything in the Coach Speak Index, as I probably wouldn't expect to. Actually, I'm just going to search Twitter real quick to see if I can find any quotes there. Because that is one of the more potentially interesting spots. All right. Tracy Wolfson tweets, running back Tyler Beatty is active. Rookie running back Otter Casimir is inactive. Sean Payton telling us Beatty has been ready to go and will be a big part of this game plan. So yeah, that is that's intriguing. A big part of this game plan. Now let's take a look at the game log real quick. Oh, Jimmy said it's on Underdog. Probably that same quote. So let me take a look at Beatty's game log here, because that's my recollection is he did appear to be. So it was week 4 is when he got hurt. So week 3 he only played 19% of the snaps. So this is less of a takeover that I remember for Tyler Beatty. He played 19. Was it Blake? Who's their other running back? They had another running back I thought that got hurt. Blake Watson. I got those two mixed up. No, it was Beatty. Okay. I think it was Beatty that in my mind, was about to take over. I mean, he played 12 snaps and had 9 carries in week 3 before getting hurt in week 4. The takeover overstated in my mind. He never actually took on that big of a workload. I mean, in 19% snaps, in my mind, he was up to like nearly 50% of the snap share. Saw a couple targets before getting hurt in week 4. I don't trust Sean Payton. So like when he says that he's going to be a big part of the game plan, when he says he's going to be a big part of the game plan, that can mean like 3 touches. Like that's just, I don't know. He's one of the least trustworthy coaches out there. And I see people talking about that now in chat also, that he's just, you can't really trust Sean Payton. And that he had not actually taken on that big of a role. I still think like it's an open enough backfield that I'm sort of intrigued by it, just because nobody has really taken over the backfield for the Broncos. I don't know. I think he's my favorite min-priced option, but I think it's like a 2% in a 150 set type play. I don't think it's a player that you want to have 30% exposure to, because the most likely scenario is he's going to score 2.4 fantasy points or something like that. Like he's probably not going to be the player you need. But I do think like Sean Payton will play the hot hand. He will surprise you sometimes. wouldn't be that shocking to see him just like randomly get 12 touches or something in this game at min price. So I think he's a fine dart throw, but only like a dart throw for the largest field tournaments, Tyler Beatty. Whereas Jaleel McLaughlin, I think, is the better option there. I don't think I'm probably actually not playing any Javonte Williams. Jaleel McLaughlin, I think, is intriguing. They seem to actually like Jaleel McLaughlin. Actually, let me bring up that game log. 16 carries in week 18 when they needed to win to get to the playoffs. So that's 42% snap share. And 2 targets on 26.5% route participating. Like, I think Jaleel McLaughlin has the best opportunity to be an actual bell cow. I know Matt Butler was in chat yesterday saying that this also like works out well as a schematic matchup for Jaleel. I don't remember if it was he does well against zone. They play a lot of zone. That is not my my strong suit is the schematic matchups, but Matt Butler was saying that it is a strong one for Jaleel McLaughlin. But what I do care about more is the just the usage, and the usage is 16 carries, 2 targets last week. Probably is that the best usage we've seen for a Broncos running back all year? I don't know. It might be. It's up there. Let's just take a look relative to the other running backs in this must-win game. So this is, I think this is our best sample size. It's just like when they needed to win. Most recently, what did they do? 16 carries for Jaleel McLaughlin. Otter Hesman actually had 12 in that game, and now he's inactive, which is kind of interesting. Javonte down to 5 carries, 4 targets on 26.5% route participation, kind of used as a pass catching back. But yeah, I think Jaleel just like the clear best option on the Broncos. I'll have more Beatty than Javonte Williams. I think I'll have 0 Javonte Williams, probably like 3% Tyler Beatty or something like that. I think he's worth enough of a shot at min price to have 2-3% in a 150 set. All right, who else? Oh, the Commanders, kind of a good one to look at. Let's see what they did last week. 5 carries for Brian Robinson, 3 for Austin Eckler, 30% route participation for Eckler, 22.5 for Brian Robinson. I don't know. Nobody's standing out as a great play on the Commanders in recent weeks. Brian Robinson just has not been that great recently. 13 carries in week 17 against Atlanta. 2 targets on 22.9% for Brian Robinson. That was without Eckler. Eckler had been out for a while. So yeah, he returns after a long absence, and immediately Eckler played 62% of the snaps to 38% for Brian Robinson. I think that they're ready for Austin Eckler to be the lead back there. At least it's not based on a ton other than he came back and immediately had a bigger workload than Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson hadn't done all that much while he was out. So I think Eckler is pretty intriguing to me. I think I actually like him better than Brian Robinson. Maybe the ownership is the same there. Brian Robinson, 16%, Austin Eckler, 13%. I don't know. I think, trust what they did. And what they did is they played Eckler more than Brian Robinson last week. He's $1,000 cheaper, more likely to be used in the passing game. So I like Eckler pretty significantly better than Brian Robinson here, especially in a tough matchup like where it's going to be easier to score points through the air than on the ground. So I think that's one where I'm kind of going to inverse the what the field is doing, where Robinson's getting 16%, Eckler 13%. I'm going to at least be, flip those, but I think even more than that, I think I'll be pretty underweight on Brian Robinson and pretty overweight on Austin Eckler. And by pretty overweight, I probably mean like I'll probably have 23%, be 10% overweight or something on Austin Eckler. I think he is maybe not even that, like 18 to 20% Eckler feels about right. Whereas Brian Robinson, I think I'll probably be around 10%, something like that. Again, fading Javonte. Yeah, I think Beatty's my favorite min-price option. The Buffalo guys, that's one more we should look at. It's clearly like James Cook is number 1, but Buffalo they're one of the teams that I think is hardest to get right, because any given week, like you don't know what they're going to do with their receivers. You don't really know what the split's going to look like for the running backs. So in week 18, we had 15 carries for Ray Davis. They didn't really play the starters in this one, so maybe we shouldn't even look at week 18. Week 17, James Cook, 15 carries, Ray Davis, 6, Ty Johnson, 4. James Cook didn't have a target, whereas both Ty Johnson and Ray Davis had 1. Ty Johnson getting 40% route participation to James Cook's 31. Week 16, Ray Davis, 5 carries, James Cook, 11, Tyler Johnson, 6. Like, it's just kind of a gross committee. And I don't think that they're going to change that in the playoffs. Like, sometimes I think teams, lean more on their stars in the playoffs. I'm not sure that they see James Cook as like that much better than their other running backs. So I'm not sure that I see that going that route. Like, I think they see value in their other running backs. Ty Johnson, 47% route participation in week 16. I don't know. It's not the best game script for Ty Johnson where I'm expecting them. I mean, you can see against Detroit, Ty Johnson, 5 targets on 40.5% route participation. Like, that makes sense in a game against an opponent that is their equal, which there aren't that many. You'd expect a little bit more from Ty Johnson. I do expect James Cook to get the most work here. I don't know. I think the ownership is just about right on James Cook. Feels a little bit high on Ray Davis at 13%. I think I prefer Austin Eckler to Ray Davis at like the same ownership. I think Ty Johnson is actually the better bet of between Ray Davis and Ty Johnson, just because, if things do go weird and the Broncos get ahead, then Ty Johnson comes in as the pass catching back. And even in like, as long as it is close, like even if it isn't ever the Broncos are playing, the Bills are playing from behind, it still could be, as long as the game is close in third down situations, Ty Johnson going to come in, potentially get a passing opportunity. So I think Ty Johnson is actually a pretty strong bet at 4,200. Pretty wide range of outcomes there, and most of them he's going to be underwhelming, but at 6% owned, I think he's a better bet than Ray Davis here. I think that does it for the running backs. Yeah, I don't see any other running back rooms that I have not talked about, so let's move on and talk about the wide receivers. And sorted by fantasy points, it is Mike Evans at the top. I don't have it in front of me, the notes on Mike Evans, but you've probably seen it all over. If you are on, okay, Dylan says ETR is Eckler at 26, B-Rob at 13. All right, so that makes a pretty big difference, the different ownership here. That seems more in line with what I would want to do. I probably want to be underweight to both of those numbers if they actually do come in there. All right. Yeah, Brendan says actions over words for Sean Payton. Seems like he likes Khalil recently. Agreed. I also think he can just like, if we see one good run from Tyler Beatty for 8 yards, then suddenly he's gonna be like, all right, that's my running back now. Like he really does, I think, play the hot hand pretty well. All right. I don't think I'm going to do a separate show tonight, Sean. I think I'm going to just cover it on this show. We'll see if I have time to do it on this show. I don't know, maybe. Do you think they played Ray Davis more because they think Ty Johnson is more important? You mean in week 18? Yeah, that would make sense. I am definitely the best rest out, that's for sure. All right. List of touches of the Broncos running backs in week 4. Beatty, McLaughlin, Williams, McLaughlin, Beatty. Yeah, that's man, it's so gross. Okay. Let's move on to wide receivers. Oh, I'll move the sidebar down. Second, there we go. And we'll start by looking at the matchups here. So in recent weeks, Buffalo just been crushed by receivers. Yeah, I mean, it looks awesome, like an awesome spot for Denver receivers across the board. Positive matchup for all receivers here. Slightly like about league average for Washington receivers against Tampa in recent weeks. Midley matchup for Green Bay receivers. I'm seeing if there are any like outliers here. I mean, it looks like it's a slightly below average matchup for slot receivers against Tampa, above average matchup for out wide receivers. Below average matchup for Eagles receivers. Tough matchup for Tampa receivers, and yeah, we'll get into the narratives there a bit. And then usage trends. Let's see. How do I do this? Got the game logs pulled up here. So we'll just take a look at recent games. We'll start with the Bucks are an interesting one to look at because I think they do have some strong plays there. So they needed to win last week. Sterling Shepard, 73% route participation. Mike Evans, 85%. Jalen McMillan, 88%. They didn't have Kate Otten in this one, which is why you're seeing Payne Durham getting so much. But those are the pretty clear. I think those are the only receivers that I am playing from Tampa on a full slate here. But I think they all look pretty good. Mike Evans, so Mike Evans has the Marshawn Lattimore matchup. So that is the narrative being referred to by some people in chat is just he has not had a lot of success against Marshawn Lattimore over the years. It's been several years now where they fight constantly. Mike Evans never really puts up great fantasy scores. I don't have the game logs in front of me, but people have posted them all over the place. Just how bad he's gotten ejected multiple times. Just not a great spot to play Mike Evans. But with that said, he's still probably he's the top projected receiver on the slate. Typically, we don't care that much about wide receiver cornerback matchups. It is projected to be a shadow situation. You can see the green line. This is where we're expecting shadow. He's expected to be shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore, who has just been. It's kind of funny that they're matching up in the playoffs after Marshawn Lattimore gets traded. He's just been a thorn in Mike Evans' side for his whole career. With that said, it all comes down to ownership for me and price. And I think he's just kind of appropriately owned, like 35% ownership at 7,900. I'll probably come in slightly underweight to that. I'm not full fading Mike Evans because of the narrative, but I do think I'll be underweight because it's just a tough matchup. Like regardless of any narrative, it's just a tough matchup for Mike Evans, and he's expensive and he's getting a fair amount of ownership. So there are other players that all have more overweight stands on. I think I'll be underweight on Evans. McMillan. I mean, if you want to buy into the narrative, McMillan's only 5,200 and getting 21% order. I think he's a really strong like sort of value option, and also a 20% is fairly contrarian on a 3-game slate. So I do think McMillan is a pretty strong bet here. And Sterling Shepard, 5% owned, is one of my favorite like value / contrarian options on the slate, because again, he ran 73% of the routes last week. It's not been a great matchup in recent weeks against Washington, but I think like it's still the game has a pretty high total. Their implied team total is fairly high. He's only 3,300. He's just going to be out there. So I think Shepard is actually one of the better value options on the slate, and he's only getting 5% ownership here. So I think Shepard looks really good. I do like the Tampa receivers, and also I do sort of want to buy into the narrative of, all right, well, let's say that Lattimore does lock up Mike Evans. Like that clearly is going to open things up a bit for Shepard and or Jalen McMillan. So I think those are both pretty strong bets. I don't think I saw anything in the specific. Let's see. It's bad for all receivers. Looks like slightly above average for right wide receivers against Washington. Who do we have as the right wide receiver? Jalen McMillan. So, by schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, it is a slightly above average matchup for Jalen McMillan. But regardless, I think he's low enough owned that I have a good amount of interest in both McMillan and Sterling Shepard. All right. Yeah, I'll take slightly underweight to Mike Evans. On the Eagles side, we have AJ Brown getting 35% ownership at 7,500. Devontae Smith getting 27% at 5,700. I don't think I'm playing any other Eagles receivers here on the 3-gamer. Again, it is a pretty middling matchup for receivers against Green Bay. Looks like the best matchup goes to the slot receiver. But it's, again, like none of these numbers are that far off of just neutral matchups. I don't really want to read that much into it, but I believe Devonta Smith has been playing some slot. Let me double check this. We'll look at the past 5 weeks. I always wonder if I should just leave week 18 off of here because I don't remember who had what to play for in week 18. So yeah, I'm just going to leave that off. All right, so the past 5 games. Yeah, 61% for Devonta Smith, more than I realized. So it is at least by a schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed standpoint, that's the best matchup for an Eagles receiver. It's actually a slightly above average matchup for Devonta Smith, but still like essentially a neutral matchup. But at 27% and just 5,700, I think Devonta Smith is actually a pretty strong play here. I think I'll probably take an overweight stance there. No real issue with AJ Brown's ownership. Terry McLaurin. So Commanders are actually an interesting one to look at. I'm just going to pull up the route share report for the Commanders because they've had some players in and out of the lineup. So I think this is the easiest way to look at it. Terry McLaurin, like pretty clearly just their wide receiver 1. They're going to use him a ton. Olamide is a case. Up to 79% route participation with both Diami and Noah Brown out. Diami returned in week 18, and it still seemed to be Olamide Zacchaeus as the number 2 receiver for the Commanders. I think that is the assumption that most people are making. I think it's probably correct that he is just their number 2 receiver at this point. And then it's kind of a committee behind them. We got McLaurin in week 18, McLaurin, Zacchaeus, and then Diami Brown, 35% route participation. Luke McCaffrey, 30%. Jamison Crowder, 30%. Sort of hard to get a read on that. I would default to thinking the wide receiver 3 is Diami Brown, just based on he had been in these 2 weeks before he got hurt. So maybe this was just a like not fully ready to go, take on a full workload yet. So yeah, I think if you're playing a third receiver from the Commanders, to me it would be Diami Brown. I'm assuming that's what the projections say also. Olamide is a KS2, Diami Brown 3, getting about 5% ownership with a 4.5 point projection. Interesting. He's actually projected better than Sterling Shepard here. I think I'd rather go to Shepard of the 2 of them if they're going to get the same ownership. But I mean, you can see like maybe Diami Brown does take on, run 60% of the routes or something this week. Would not be shocking, but I don't think I'm playing any Luke McCaffrey, any of the other Washington receivers. Like, it's just at some point, it's like, okay, the upside is maybe 2 catches and he scores a touchdown. That's probably not enough on a 3-game slate. So it's a little bit different from Showdown from that standpoint. So yeah, I think I would rather not. I'm not going to get to anybody beyond maybe Diami Brown. Maybe I'll sprinkle in a little bit, but maybe not even that. Yeah, Debro loves Jalen McMillian. Love to see it. All right, good to see Debro showing up, telling me some of the better matchup stuff. Devonta Smith pop in versus cover 2-3. So it's good matchup from a schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the slot, and it's a good matchup in terms of coverages that Devonta Smith does well against. So yeah, Devonta Smith looking really good today. So that is good note there from Debro says he's jamming some Smitty. Love it. Devonta Smith. There it is. There you have it. Stack and Relax wants to know about Trey Palmer. All right, let's take a look at the Buccaneers. This tab. Trey Palmer, week 18. Oh, yeah, he only ran 7.5% of the route. So, no, I would not play Trey Palmer. 17% in week 17. No, he has not been part of the game plan. It's really just those three for the Buccaneers. Yeah, I forgot. I already looked at the Buccaneers. No, I would not play Trey Palmer. But yeah, on the Commander side, so Old Meat is a case, 26% projected ownership. He's only 4,400, and he does appear to be the wide receiver too at this point. I don't think I have any real issue with that. Courtland Sutton, I mean, this stands out to me. 19% ownership going to Courtland Sutton at 6,600. Again, you look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. The best matchup in the league by far over the past 5 weeks for receivers against Buffalo. Let's see, primarily for right wide receivers. I mean, it's a positive matchup for all. I'm just trying to see if like anything else there. I don't know. This is, let's see. Oh, this is he's the left wide receiver. Troy Franklin, according to this, Troy Franklin, the right wide receiver. Devon Vele, the slot, doesn't even have Marvin Mims as one of the top receivers listed here. I don't know. It's but according to this, Courtland Sutton primarily lines up left. But as you can see here, positive matchup for all receivers on Denver. Not really concerned with the individual matchup there. I think he's still just like the clear top receiver for Denver. So yeah, 19% ownership. That seems like a spot I'd like to be well overweight on. So there you go. Devonta Smith, Courtland Sutton. Maybe I'll put together a lineup at some point on the show. Yeah, fourth best. Is he the fifth best projection here? Just barely behind Devonta Smith. Either way, looks great. He is, as you can see, he projects worse than Devonta Smith, and he's more expensive. But that ownership just stands out to me. That 19% projected ownership for the top receiver. Now let's look at the game log for Courtland Sutton, because it hasn't been as good recently as I recall. Still, 7 targets in week 18, 9 in week 17. Week 16, just 5. I think this is the week where there was one of these weeks he put up a huge dud in the fantasy playoffs, but then 9, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10. I mean, pretty consistent. Really, just this week is an outlier. 7 a little bit low, but the usage is just great for Courtland Sutton. They should have to throw quite a bit to try to keep up with the Bills. I think he looks great. All right. Yes, love to see it. I wouldn't rule out Peyton giving him 8 to 10 touches. Yeah, I wouldn't either. Dero thinks that Sutton going to be higher owned. Let's see. Oh, you want to know Amari on FanDuel? Let me see if I can. No, never mind. I was going to say I can look at another source. It might just be easier for me to look at it. It's going to be like nothing. So it'll be similar on both sites because he just doesn't project that well. So it'll be about 1% both places, 1-2% for Amari Cooper, both places because he just doesn't project well enough to get into optimizers. Khalil Shakir getting a ton of ownership here, just kind of as the default if you're stacking with Josh Allen and Khalil Shakir makes the most sense in general. Or is going to be like he's the comfort click if you're stacking with Josh Allen. It's Khalil Shakir or it's Dalton Kincaid. In week 18 they rested their starters. Week 17, Khalil Shakir 62% route participation, 5 targets. I mean, look at the target shares just across the board. Like, how often do you see anybody hit double digits? 14 for Amari Cooper in week 14. That's interesting. But in general, like you rarely 11 for Khalil Shakir in week 11. Pretty rare to see a wide receiver reach double digits for the Bills this year, which makes it tough. Like that is the hard thing with Josh Allen is who do you really want to stack him with when nobody's ever getting double-digit targets, or like it's fairly rare for anybody to get double-digit targets. But so the Bills are a fascinating one, and I'll pull up the route share report again. So in week 18, they rested Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid. I wanted to read into Amari Cooper sitting, but I think he just actually was dealing with a family emergency. So I don't think he was necessarily being held out as a veteran like the others. Amari Cooper, so he's interesting to me, and yes, he is. Somebody asked earlier, is Amari Cooper who I'm referring to when I'm referring to a very contrarian Bills option that I love? It is Amari Cooper, but as you can see here, the route participation pretty bad for Amari Cooper. So it was 58% week 13, 58% week 14, then down to 41%, 47%, 38% in week 17. Don't love that. So I don't really have any great reason for loving Amari Cooper here, but I kind of do anyway, because I think he fits the mold of the type of player that you wouldn't be that surprising to see them just say, all right, it's the playoffs now. Let's lean on our veterans, the guys who we trust in big situations. I think Amari Cooper has earned that kind of trust in big situations. And he also has, it's been 2 weeks since the last time he played. Obviously sat out last week, and he's been part of the issue with him, I think, has been learning the playbook. That he hasn't been ready to take on a huge role. So I'm sort of thinking like sort of fringy, like, and that's kind of what we're playing at here, is like projections are so good at this point, and we have sims that are so good. So a lot of what I'm doing is like trying to figure out like where is there like potentially something more than what you can reasonably project. I think Amari Cooper is one of those players where you can just kind of, you can make a case for like maybe they just haven't really been fully utilizing him because they haven't needed to yet. Like they've been winning without him, but maybe in the playoffs they just lean more into the trusted veteran. I also think I would like it better if not for the fact that he had missed several days in the span with the family emergency. Like I would have, that does kind of, it interrupts the process of like, okay, well maybe like just this gives him a little bit more time to learn the playbook and reach in the playoffs. Like this could just be like everything kind of hitting at once where suddenly they're like, all right, 10 targets for Amari Cooper. But the fact it was interrupted by him missing some time, I don't know. I don't like it quite as much as I wanted to, but I still think it's a place where he is projected for virtually zero ownership. Let's see, I'll show you. Oop, didn't mean to do that. Let me reopen that. And this is the right slate, right? Yep. So, okay, 4% here. So this is higher than I've seen other places where it's projected for 1% ownership. Let me see. Let me open another source here. Yeah, 1%. Another source I'm looking at, Rotogrinders has him at 4%. Regardless, I think he's the type of player that just like, I feel like there is asymmetric upside to Amari Cooper where he could potentially see like 12 targets, and none of us are going to be that shocked if we come out of today like, yeah, of course they leaned on Amari Cooper. He's their best receiver in the playoffs. So I think he's just a player that I'm going to be taking bets on Amari Cooper. I definitely would rather play him than Keon Coleman, for example. See Keon Coleman getting 10% ownership here. Keon Coleman is, we saw his Fantasy Points has it as a shadow matchup here. Keon Coleman being shadowed by Pat Surtain. So really, really awful matchup for Keon Coleman. Now, I talked about this with Jake yesterday, and he thinks that this is not a like super like high confidence or maybe just not a super like, they're not expecting it to be a full shadow coverage by Pat Surtain. Like maybe he'll be on half the game or something, I think is what Jake was saying. None of us really know, but it's worth noting that Fantasy Points does have it as a Pat Surtain shadow covering Keon Coleman today, which it's like one of the worst matchups you can get. ultimately, I think Amari Cooper just stands out as it would make sense for them to lean on their veteran receiver. Doesn't mean they're going to do it, and it's interrupted by him missing some time the past couple weeks. But I still think it's probably worth taking an overweight stance there. And I'll probably be 4x the field, 5x the field on Amari Cooper. I might get to, I think I'll probably have 20% or so. So maybe I will be about 5x the field on Amari Cooper. In a 150 set, I think he makes a lot of sense. All right. Any other bills? I guess let's take a look real quick again at the route share report. So yeah, Khalil Shakir is like Khalil Shakir is their nominal wide receiver one. Keon Coleman did have he ran 83% of the routes in week 17. He played in week 18, but again, I think he had missed a lot of time in the middle of the season, and he's a rookie. So I think they're just kind of, I don't think this is an indication that they don't value him in the playoffs. I think it's just he's a rookie receiver, missed some time mid-season. They want to make sure that he has enough reps for the playoffs is how I read that. Not something that I'm concerned about. Matt Collins, again, 85% route participation in week 18. They love him. Everything they say about Matt Collins is glowing, but I think like the what you should really expect is probably somewhere in this range, 40 to 60% route participation. Curtis Samuel missed a couple games here, week 16 and week 17. Ran 82% of the routes in week 18. I'm not expecting much. I don't think I'm playing any Curtis Samuel today. I don't think I'm playing any Matt Collins either. I think it's basically just Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper for me. And I think Amari Cooper is the player on the Bills that I'm going to be taking the dart throws on rather than a Matt Collins. So I just don't see the asymmetric upside with a Matt Collins or Curtis Samuel. Like, he could score a touchdown. Either of them could score a touchdown. But I don't see the all right, he put up 19 fantasy points, and it's what you needed on a 3-game slate from either of them. Whereas I think Amari Cooper has that in his range of outcomes, and he's getting really low ownership. So yeah, probably just these top 3 for me of Bills receivers. And I'll have the most of Khalil Shakir, as will the field. But I will have more of Amari Cooper than Keon Coleman. Packers receivers also always fairly interesting. We have Christian Watson out. Let's pull up the game. Let's go back to the route share report again for the Packers. So where has Christian Watson missed time? So he missed in week 5. Dontavian Wicks, 62% route participation. Romeo Doubs also missed that game. In week 17 with Christian Watson out, 68% for Dontavian Wicks. It's pretty clearly Dontavian Wicks is the player that we're expecting to step into get the biggest boost, I guess, from Christian Watson being out. But it's, Romeo Doubs probably going to run the most routes. Jayden Reed probably the most explosive. I don't know. Dontavian Wicks, I guess, is right there in terms of explosiveness on the Packers. Doubs can get there on volume and touchdowns. Wicks is probably, let's see, let me look at the ownership again. Okay, Wicks getting 19% here. Doubs getting 13%. And Reed, where is Reed? Oh, Reed only getting 6% is fascinating to me. It's been a while since he's actually had a good game. Let's pull up the game log. But 57% route participation, 2 targets last week. Week 17, 4 targets. 4 targets in week 16, 6 targets week 15. I want to look at the actual fantasy points from Jayden Reed. Yeah, not great. A couple 11 fantasy point games. It's back to what week is he had? 19.7 in week 13 against Miami. I mean, he has not had a great second half of the year after a massive start to the year with 33 and 27 in two of his first 4 games. I don't know, but we've seen that upside from Jayden Reed. They'll use him sometimes out of the backfield. He's only 5,500. They might have to get creative against the Eagles, which I think Jayden Reed works for creativity in the offense. I'll be overweight to 6% for sure. If he comes in at that number, yeah, I think that is definitely worth taking an overweight stance on Jayden Reed. All right. Yeah, like 34% going to AJ Brown, I believe. Let's see. I'd go Hurts and Devonta Smith for the correlation there. All right. Seems like I might have to do another show later. I think that is bold, but I don't think I'm playing naked Josh Allen, but I kind of get it. I don't think it's going to be that uncommon, to be honest. Do you like Reed or Cooper better? Oh, that's tough because I mean, Reed, I'd be sort of surprised if he actually comes into this ownership, whereas I think Amari Cooper actually will. If he did come into this ownership, I think I would like Reed better, but it's pretty close. I think I'll have a bigger overweight stance to Amari Cooper because I trust that he's going to be low owned, whereas Jayden Reed, I'd be a little bit more surprised. So at these ownership numbers, I would prefer Reed, but I think I actually prefer Cooper, I guess, because I am more confident in the low ownership there. Okay, I think that does it for Broncos receivers. Let's just take a quick look at Broncos. Route share report. So Courtland Sutton, the very clear wide receiver one. Devon Vele has been kind of 50%-ish in recent weeks. Troy Franklin, I don't know. I guess they've actually been fairly consistent in how they've used them. You know, I see it as it's kind of gross situation, hard to read, but like nobody really like strays that far from there. Like, all right, 40 to 60% for Devon Vele. It's been 36 to 38% 3 straight weeks for Troy Franklin. Lil Jordan Humphrey not really used. Marvin Mims is probably my second favorite of the Denver receivers because they just have found ways to Jacobs went out, like he's done really well in terms of yards per route run out of the backfield, and they've been using him out of the backfield a lot more in recent weeks. So I think Marvin Mims, even though he's like the route share is not always great, he's also getting some carries, and he's just I don't know, he's dynamic. He can make some splash plays. So I think Sutton, my favorite of the group, Marvin Mims, my second favorite of the group. But I think the field also has it that way. Sutton, though, like stands out just as a really strong, low projected ownership play. Mims, yeah, 12% ownership. He's up to 5,100. Like that's a high enough price tag that I don't think I'll be taking. I might even be underweight on 12% Marvin Mims. Devon Vele, 4%. Feels appropriate. I think that's at 4,100. He's a pretty strong bet also. I'll probably be above 4% there on Vele. And Franklin, 6%, 3,100, similar. Like I think those are pretty good. Like if you need some value, going to Troy Franklin makes a lot of sense. Devon Vele feels about appropriate. They're probably going to need to be throwing the ball late. All right. Move on to tight ends. I don't have that much to say about tight ends. I guess we can take a look at the matchups here. Schedule adjusted. Strong matchup for Denver, but like who are you going to play from Denver? I don't think you want to play anybody at this point. I don't think I'm playing a tight end from Denver. Strong matchup for Zach Ertz. He's going to get a good amount of targets. He's been pretty consistently seeing targets all year. Doesn't really do a ton with them. He scored 2 touchdowns, I think, their last game. That's in his range of outcomes. I think Ertz is like a fine play. You're kind of hoping for a touchdown on top of a few receptions, handful of receptions. Not a lot of great matchups for the tight ends here. Below average matchup for Dalton Kincaid, Cade Otton, Dallas Goedert, Tucker, like everybody, all of them. It's sort of a gross situation. want to look at the rapture report for the Packers for Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. So Kraft pretty consistently staying in the upper 70s. Musgrave, they've said they want to continue to get him more involved. He was up to 32% in week 18. So we could see Musgrave cut into Kraft at some point, but so far it hasn't really been a concern. Looking at the ownership, I mean, Dalton Kincaid does stand out to me. He's only 4,000, 19% projected ownership. Yeah, over 50% of routes in 2 of the last 3 games. A couple of 7-target games in the past 3 and an 8-target in 5 games ago. Yeah, Kincaid at 4,000, getting just 19% ownership stands out as a pretty strong bet. Kate Otten at 9% seems like a pretty strong bet. He's missed some time, but at 9%, I think that's, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I'll be right with the field there. For the most part, like I'd say Zach Ertz probably a little bit over-owned here. Kincaid, I do like. I think he's under-owned. For the most part, I think the field has it right with the tight ends. All right. Let's take a brief look at I'm going to at least start and look at the first showdown slate. And it's going to be a lot of the same plays, I suspect. Josh Allen, 25%. Bo Nix, 14%. I think those should be the 2 highest owned. Courtland Sutton at 9%. I like that number. I think I want to be overweight on Courtland Sutton. Again, I think Amari Cooper, there is asymmetric upside. I'll take an overweight stance on 1.5% at captain. Khalil McLaughlin, 5% seems pretty good. But if I were hand building, it would probably be one of the quarterbacks or Sutton at captain for me. In the flex. Here, Shakir actually looks a little bit under-owned at 7,400, getting 35% ownership. Amari Cooper, again, I'd take an overweight stance to 13%. I'm actually not playing the showdown. I decided to do this show instead of playing the showdown. But I would take an overweight stance to 13% Amari Cooper. That looks like a really strong bet there. Kincaid, 20%. There's actually a lot of really strong plays. I kind of wish I was playing the showdown. Now that I'm looking at the ownership, I'd like to be overweight on Amari Cooper and Dalton Kincaid. And Khalil McLaughlin at just 5,800. Where's Tyler Beatty? Ty Johnson, 12%. Like a lot of fairly, although that they kind of eat into each other too. There's so many of these like low-owned, like, oh, he seems like a pretty good bet type plays that you don't want to play them all in one lineup. You want to have a couple of them, maybe. Beatty at 7% at 1,400 looks good. Not like amazing, but I think that's a pretty good bet there. I don't want to be overweight there. Yeah, take it back. Like I said, I want to play I wish I was playing the showdown, but also it's a tough showdown because there's just so much volatility in it. Thank you for the reminder, Steven. I'm only playing the main slate, and I've already run lineups. I just need to make sure I submit them. If I were taking a dart on a Denver tight end, it would be Lucas Krull still. What's up, Conscious? You're buying Devin Culp with Otten off injury? Otten's expected to play. I don't understand. Why would you want Devin Culp? All right. Favorite flex play, 4,100 or less on DraftKings. I feel like it might have been Devon Vele. Let's see. Oh, I did tiers. That's not what I want. Yeah, Vele is 4,100. Or Kincaid, actually. Probably Kincaid above Vele for me. Yeah, Kincaid 1, Vele 2, I think. All right. And then I think I probably will do a Sunday Night Football Showdown slate instead of doing it now. Let's see. Let me see if I have time. I think I'm doing... Need to refresh this. Washington, Tampa. Jayden Daniels getting 17% on. I really like Jayden Daniels on this. I think I'd like to be overweight to 18%. Evans at 14% feels about appropriate. Bucky 17%. Again, probably want to be overweight there. Actually, Terry looks really good at 8%. Terry McLaurin, I'd like to be overweight that number. Jalen McMillan, yeah, 4%. Sign me up for that. Jalen McMillan, captain. And then in the flex, I think I will have Jayden Daniels in a majority of my lineups. McMillan stands out, 24%. I mean, he's 7,600. Feels about right. Eckler looks good, 4,800, just 21% owned. I think I'd like to be overweight to Austin Eckler pretty significantly. Sterling Shepard I like quite a bit at 3,000 and 13% owned on the Showdown slate. Here's where, like, if you want to play Trey Palmer, I think he's fine on the Showdown slate. Still not, like, enthusiastic about it. Not expecting him to play much. Sean Tucker, actually a pretty good bet, just from a... Sometimes they'll throw him into the goal line. Only getting 8.6% ownership. Rashad White sort of in the doghouse. So I think Sean Tucker, a pretty good bet at 2,400, kind of as a low-owned dart throw. Dammy Brown also, I mean, I mentioned Sterling Shepard. Dammy Brown, not that much of a different play there. Like, he's probably the wide receiver 3 on his team, getting 13% owned, and he's 3,400. So he's also a player. These two, I think I'd like to be pretty significantly overweight on, along with Eckler. But still, I'm building in. Basically, all my lineups will have at least 3 of Jayden Daniels, Mike Evans. I mean, I can sort by fantasy points here. Jayden Daniels, Mike Evans, Bucky Irving, Baker Mayfield, Terry McLaurin. Is it just those 3? I guess you can include Zach Ertz and Jalen McMillan in that group if you wanted to. I probably would. At least 3 of those top 7 options by projection. And then I'll mix in the Ecklers, the Dammy Browns, the Sterling Shepard, etc., etc. All right. I think I am going to take a quick look at the final Showdown slate. Because I don't really think I want to... Oh, sorry. I skipped the middle one. So I went straight to the night one already. So now I have to go back and do the middle Showdown slate here. AJ Brown expected for the most ownership. Jalen Hurts looks off. I mean, Saquon Barkley, if he only gets 11.5% captain ownership, sign me up for all the Saquon Barkley. Jacobs looks pretty good as a captain play at 10%. Yeah, Devontae Smith, I mean, double that for me. Captain exposure. Wicks looks pretty good, although not that cheap. Jordan Love at just 4.5% looks pretty solid. Romeo Dobbs, 3.5%. Jayden Reed, I'd like to be pretty significantly overweight, I think, at captain. And then in the flex, yeah, I guess Saquon's expensive. I think that's the issue here, is you've got 4 really strong options in double digit, in 10,000 or above. So it's hard to fit all of them. So I think that's probably why Saquon, as the most expensive, getting squeezed to an extent. But I think it makes sense to try to force him in there. Devontae Smith, again, just looks awesome. He's a bit cheaper. Great matchup there. Wick's a pretty nice value saver. Dobbs is so expensive. I think 22.5%. I think that's just fine. Reed looks really good at 7,600, 18% ownership. I do think Reed is worth getting overweight. And I think Musgrave makes a lot of sense as a showdown play, based on the coach speak saying they'd like to get him more involved. 8% ownership at 1,600. I think he's a really strong showdown bet, who I would not play probably on the main slate. Bo Melton, there was actually some positive coach speak also about how he appears to be ready. I guess he's getting 19% ownership. I don't love him for the main slate because I'm not expecting him to have a full-time role, but on the showdown slate at 1,200, 19% ownership for Bo Melton. Let's see. Trying to find it real quick. Just on the 6th, Matt LaFleur said, Bo Melton is a guy that we've got a lot of confidence in. If given the opportunity, I think he'll make the play. So I guess that's not, that amazing, but at least at 1,200 on a showdown slate looks good. Excuse me, man. I'm getting out of practice apparently. I have to stream every day, so this doesn't happen to my voice. Jahan Dotson, I guess. I just Jahan Dotson so tough to click always, but 3,000, 5.7% ownership. Let's see the route share report. Yeah, I mean, the routes have been there all year for Jahan Dotson. So on the showdown slate, I guess he is somebody to at least consider. All right, I think that is going to do it. Oh, Emmanuel Wilson, I think, is borderline. I mean, 9%, I guess, is fine. Doesn't stand out. Kickers, McManus looks good. Elliott looks good. I don't know. Kickers' defenses look fine. All right, that's going to do it for the show, I think, because I need to go put my lineups in. But appreciate all of you hanging out with me for the duration of this show. I don't think I'm going to do a show tonight. I'll announce on X if I decide to do one later. But as of right now, I've not been planning on doing a Sunday Night Football show. I'll definitely be doing a Monday Night Football show, but I'll let you know if I change my mind and decide it's worth a deeper look at the Sunday Night Football slate. I'm going to get out of here, drink some water, submit some lineups. If you have not done so, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, trying to get to 5,000 by the end of the NFL season. Still have a long way to go there. Of course, if you like the video, comment, all of that is helpful for the YouTube algo. Also, join the Flannelverse Discord if you haven't already. Good time in there. Link is in the description of this video. All right, thanks guys. Really appreciate you all. I will see you either tonight or tomorrow night for the Monday Night Football stream. Thanks. Good luck. Catch you later.